This is my Canyon Endurace AL7 and this is my Rysel RCR. The Canyon is fitted with Shimano's 105 mechanical group set and the Rysel is fitted with Sram's Rival AXS electronic group set. Today we're going to compare the two group sets to see if electronic shifting is really worth the extra cost. Now there's quite a few differences between these two bikes. The Rysel is of course a carbon frame with carbon wheels and disc brake, carbon handlebars, obviously electronic shifting. The Canyon Endurace is an aluminium frame with rim brakes, with alloy rims, mechanical shifting. So there's lots of differences. So if you ride both of these bikes back to back, it's very difficult to pinpoint where the extra performance or comfort or enjoyment is coming out of in terms of those different components. But today we're going to be focusing on the group set to try and see if there's a difference between the two. So we're going to try to isolate the group sets in themselves and see how the shifting goes between the two of them, see how the riding feels, and yeah, see if there really is a difference between mechanical and electronic. Obviously, I'm just an amateur rider, so this is going to be a real-world, real-life comparison between the two group sets. So it should apply to the everyday cyclist amongst us. You know, we're not looking at this particularly from a performance lens. So yeah, let's see. The Canyon, obviously mechanical group set. This is a 2x11 setup, and I'm running 52x36 on the front, and then it's 11-34 in terms of the cassette at the back. Obviously all aluminium setup, cable actuated in terms of the shifting, and then the shifters on the front are obviously aluminium. There's no hydraulic reservoir because of the rim brakes, so quite a thin kind of shifting field there in terms of the hoods. Yeah, that's the 105. Then the Rysel, the Sram Rival. This is a 2x12 setup with 48-35 on the front and then 10x36 on the back. Obviously there's no cables for the shifters because it's electronically driven. You've got a battery on the front derailleur here and then a battery on the rear, which is powering both the derailleurs. And then the shifters at the front, obviously aluminium as well, a little bit thicker than the 105 because there's the hydraulic reservoir, which is powering the hydraulic cables to the disc brakes. Yeah, that's Sram Rival. So in terms of the price of the two setups, it's obviously a bit difficult to talk about price because most people will be buying these as part of complete bikes. So you're not buying the group set by itself. There's also loads of different retailers online where you can find the group sets, and they all sort of have different prices, different markups, different discounts and things like that. So it's difficult to pinpoint a direct price for the two of them. And what I did find was that the Shimano 105 tends to be about between 700-800 euros, and then the Sram Rival group set, if you're going to buy it by itself, you're looking at around 1500 to 1600 euros, something like that. So on average it seems like the Sram Rival is about 2 times the amount of the mechanical 105. Right, I'm going to get kitted up and take these bikes for a spin one by one so you can start to see some of the differences between the shifting in terms of how it feels. Before we do that, I'm going to get the bikes up on the mechanic stand and have a little flick through the shifting so we can have a look at the speed of the changes. Right, so we've got the Canyon up on the mechanic stand here, which is the 105 mechanical group set. and straight away there's an issue. Now, when this was my primary bike, I used to face this issue quite a lot. Because the derailleur is actuated by the cable, what can happen is over time the cables can get loose, I guess, or weaker. I'm not sure exactly the mechanics behind it all, but essentially the rear derailleur can get out of sync slightly with how it shifts, so it needs to be indexed. And to index it, you basically have to turn this to try and match the alignment of the derailleur with the cogs. Essentially, it's quite a manual process and it's quite a frustrating thing to do. I never found with this bike that I could get it 100% spot on where it would shift through all the gears nicely, and we can see an example of that here straight away. So we're in the small ring on the front. If we want to go into the very biggest gear that we've got at the top here, I'll try and do this with one hand. But we can see here that when I shift up into that big gear, it doesn't really want to do it, and then when it does do it, it drops back down again, and look how it's kind of flicking between the two. So basically this rear derailleur needs to be indexed to line everything up again to make it work nicely. And what I found when I was using this bike a lot is that I would have to index it maybe every 300-400 kilometers or so, maybe even more. Sometimes within a ride I would find that it would go out of sync, and so I'd have to try and change things. And at one point we changed all the cabling out to put new cables, and we found that there was dirt within the housing of the cables, which was causing a bit of slack on the cable tension and all that, which was causing issues with the alignment. So that's one of the major issues that I found anyway personally with mechanical shifting, which you don't get with electronic. On the Van Rysel with the Sram Rival AXS, you've got the app for indexing, so you don't really even have to index it. You just align it on the app how you want it to be, and then it remains in that exact position for as long as you like. There's no cables which can go soft and lose tension over time. So I've had the Van Rysel now for about a year, and I've basically aligned it on the app how I wanted it to be in the first place, and then I've never touched it again. So that's a huge bonus for me. Right, I think that's enough waffle. I am going to change into kit and get out on the road with the two bikes and see how we go. Alright, so we are kitted up and ready to go. We're going to head out with the Canyon first, which is the mechanical group set. It's really sunny on one side and then quite grey over there. I'm not sure if you can see it, so I better get this done pretty quickly before the rain comes in. Hopefully we don't get wet. I've not actually ridden this bike for a while. I still use it on the trainer from time to time indoors, but with the weather being so good over the summer and you know, a bit too hot for indoor training, I haven't actually used the trainer for a while, so the bike feels totally weird. The geometry feels a bit different and all that. So to be honest with you, it shifts okay really. It's not the smoothest, the crispest, or you know, the sharpest of shifting. It's only the 105 group set, so it's fairly affordable in the Shimano lineup, but it's a perfectly fine bike in terms of changing gear as and when you need it to do so. It's not an instant gear change, but it's pretty much fast enough. I do have the problem of the biggest gear at the back, the biggest cog, the easiest gear, let's say. Since the derailleur needs to be indexed, it won't stay up in that last gear, so obviously I don't need that gear now because I'm only on the flat. But that would be a bit annoying if I did need to use that. If you're considering going for a mechanical group set, because that's what your budget allows you to do, then honestly there's absolutely no harm in that. They run perfectly fine, they shift as and when you need them to, they do the job, they're pretty easy to maintain in terms of the mechanics and all that behind it.
you have that kind of indexing issue, but you know, you're paying a lot less than you would do for premium group sets. So yeah, in my opinion, they're perfectly fine. There's no sort of luxury feel to a mechanical group set, which you get, I think, with the electronic. So that's got to be taken into account, but then you're not paying luxury prices for it. So yeah, all in all, I think you can't go wrong with it. You can do better, but you can't go wrong, I'd say. Right, let's switch on to the RCR before the clouds come over a bit more. So we're now out on the RCR, and I can say that straight away, feeling much more at home on this bike. Obviously that's not to do with the group set, but I've ridden over 5,000 kilometers on this bike this year, so I'm definitely a lot more used to the geometry, the setup, and I think it's a lot more comfortable in that sense. I've never actually ridden these two bikes side by side as well, so this is the first time that I'm sort of doing it back to back, so I can feel a lot of the difference in the frame, the compliance in the frame. This one being a carbon frame, it's quite a stiff carbon frame. I wouldn't call it comfortable in terms of other carbon frames and all that, but compared to the aluminium frame of the Canyon, it's like sitting on a sofa. And I've never really noticed that because, like I said, I've never ridden the bikes directly back to back. But yeah, the frame comfort is sort of night and day in that sense. Could also be the wheels, the carbon wheels as well, and it could also be that the tyres are tubeless here, so I can run lower pressures. So I think it's a combination of all those things coming together. Definitely makes this feel a lot more smooth and a lot more comfortable. But group set is the main thing we're talking about today, and I would say that although, you know, it does feel better, the electronic shifting, the actual shifting in terms of the speed of the gear change and the crispness, the sharpness of the shifting, I don't think it feels that much different to the mechanical 105. I don't think it's that much better. What I do think is better is the way that you push the button or the levers to make the shift. On the electronic, you've just got a button that you're pressing. It's like pushing a button on a keyboard or something like that. You know, you push the button and you get a consistent shift every single time. That's not quite the same on the mechanical shifting, at least on my 105 setup. I sometimes find that, you know, you can over push the lever across and it shifts twice instead of once, or sometimes you don't quite push it far enough and it doesn't make the shift, or the chain at the back goes into like halfway up into the next gear and starts clicking like this because it's not fully over. So over time you get used to that, and I don't think that's a major issue. I remember when I was riding that bike consistently, I got used to the feel of the shifting, and you're not kind of clicking a button, you're sort of you're sort of pulling the cable until the tension is the right amount to go into the next gear. So it just takes a little bit more thought. Like on the shifting on this, on the electronic, it's just a button, you push the button and bang, you're in the next gear. You can see the grey clouds behind me there. Lovely and sunny on this side, big grey over there. Right, I'm going to finish off this ride. I'm not doing very much riding today, just a really easy effort. Thought I'd record this video while I do it. I'm going to finish this off, get back inside, and then we can talk about final thoughts. Right, well anyway, that's the ride done. So happy to get in before the rain and thunder hits. Only a really short ride. One thing I forgot to say as well on the shifting is that I think that on the electronic shifting, at least with this Sram Rival, I feel like you can shift under load a bit easier. So when you're pushing hard, you know, pushing power through the system, you can change gear and the group set can cope with that. I think you could do that on the mechanical 105, but it always felt a bit clunky to me. So what I used to do is kind of lift off the power for the split second that I'm changing gear, and then make the change and then go back into power again. With the Sram Rival AXS you don't have to do that, I don't think. So yeah, that's one thing. But as I ended the ride, look at what my bike computer said to me. I don't know if you can read that because it's quite sunny on the screen, but it basically says low battery gear selection. So that brings us on to the one kind of major negative of electronic shifting, aside from the price, of course, and that is that you have to keep charging the batteries. So it's really handy that the computer tells you that the battery is running low. There's actually 4 batteries in the system. There's one in each shifter, as well as one on the front derailleur and one on the rear. So I don't know which one is running low. The 2 on the derailleurs can obviously be charged with a special charging adapter that SRAM gives you. The ones in the shifter are actually coin cell batteries, like what you put into a watch. So they tend to last quite a long time because they don't use a lot of power, the shifters. But you have to check. Now, I can open up the app on my phone and it will tell me exactly what the battery levels are for each of those 4 batteries. So that's really handy. You can have a look at that and then you can say, okay, it's the shifters, I need to put new coin batteries in there, or I need to charge up the derailleurs. They tend to last quite a long time. It's kind of ironic that we're talking about group sets, and as I'm doing this ride it gives me the alert for low battery because it doesn't happen that often. So it is a downside, but not the end of the world. I think if you're doing something like ultra distance riding, you know, either on gravel or on road or whatever it could be, that's something you've got to think about, is like, how do you keep your batteries charged if you're doing a super long journey, or if you're doing like bike packing or something like that. It's not impossible, there's ways to do it, but it's just an extra thing to think about having to charge. So, closing thoughts for me before we end the video. So I would say that electronic group sets really are a luxury. They're definitely a nice to have, not a need to have. You can get by perfectly fine with a mechanical group set. They work really well. They should be generally quite efficient and reliable as well. You don't have the battery issues to worry about, which is great. Electronic shifting though, if you've got the money for it and it's what you want to do, then by all means go for it, because it really is a really nice feeling to ride with an electronic group set. I think once you move to electronic, you probably won't want to go back to mechanical. That's definitely how I feel anyway. There's some downsides with the batteries and things like that, but you know, it's just an extra thing that you have to learn to live with and to add to your routine. So yeah, I hope that's helped shed some light on those 2 systems. I hope you've learned a little bit about the different group sets, and yeah, feel free to let me know your thoughts as well in the comments. If you have mechanical, you're thinking of upgrading to electronic, what's stopping you from doing that? Is it the price or anything else? And if you have electronic, would you go back to mechanical, or are you super happy with the investment that you made into the electronic group set? Awesome. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.